Warning: the following video contains strong language which may be offensive to some viewers and or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Southern Fried Paranormal with Lynn Dorman featuring Bones. Catch us on Spotify, iHeart, iTunes, Spreaker, Facebook, Stream, and everywhere else you catch your podcasts. And of course, WLFE-DB.com. Now, from the backwoods of southeast Arkansas, right beside the Bayou Bartholomew, the longest bayou on the planet, broadcasting from downtown metropolitan Cane Creek Township, here is your host, Lynn Dorman.
Body. I am looking different tonight. I usually wear my hair in a ponytail. I got it down tonight. I'm wearing a oh my gosh glowing shirt tonight. It's long sleeves, so you see my arm. Yes, I look like Zeus or somebody, but you know that's the way it goes. I kind of like this look. It's different, but anyway, the shirt kind of matches the hair. Anyway, we have got a major guest on tonight. She has written several books. She is coming out with a new book. Here is the latest banner that I made for her. Lynn Monet, Omnipresent. She's coming out Colors of Heaven. She's coming out with another book pretty soon. And she will be glad to tell you all about it, including about where you can get these books. That's which is always important when you've got an author on. All right, without further ado, let's bring out the tonight's show, or should I say the first lens? Ladies always come first. Lynn Monet.
Hi, everybody. And Lynn, you're looking luminescent tonight, very heavenly. Hello, everybody. I want to send some hearts out to several of my friends, Kristen and Chris from Dark Horse Paranormal and Bigfoot and the Bunny, and Greg Koss from the Shadow Hour, Mary, Anne Marie, and Reggie. I'm sure most of them are in here, as well as Cisco from Journey Through the Gate and Steve Stockton. So I want to say hello to all of those people and thank you for coming. And if they're not here, they will be here at some point. But yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much for reaching out.
Hey, thank you for appearing on the show. I was wondering who I was going to get as a guest, and it's great to have an author on here who's talking about her books, because as part of my history and self-experience, books make a great gift for Christmas. Hint to everybody.
Yes, they do.
To start with, where can people get your books?
The first book, Omnipresent, is out everywhere. It's through Amazon, has it, Barnes and Noble. You can even get it at Walmart, but you can get it from my website too, which would be really nice because then I personalize it and sign it. When you do purchase it, there's a little area for you to write the spelling of the name of the person that you wanted to go to, as well as an area for me to autograph it for you. And the price is the same as it is with Amazon. I also, the other books that I'm selling, I'm going to be selling through my website only, which is www.lynnmonet.com. I currently have Omnipresent out. Omnipresent is going to end up being a 5-part series. Yes, and it's at the bottom there, lynnmonet.com. I'm currently working on the third book. So there's Omnipresent, What Happened Next. The next book is Omnipresent, 111 Becky Dawn Drive. And then there will be 2 more books after that. I currently have just released The Colors of Heaven, Beginnings Never End. There will be a sequel to that one as well, because now this book has raised more questions. It is out in ebook and can be gotten off of my website. I also currently have in editing a book called The Gap, What Else Adolescents and Teens Need to Know, which cover everything from body hygiene to what you do if a condom breaks. So all of those things that sometimes, parents don't tell or the school doesn't tell them, and it gets into healthy boundaries, how to get out of a trunk if you're in one, type thing. I even have pictures of latches. So it's got a lot of good information in it for teenagers and teens. I was asked to write it by some therapists because there's really not a book like this out there. And then I'm currently, as I made mention, I'm writing the third book for the series of Omnipresent. So yes, you can find them all on my website, www.lynnmonet.com. And currently I have in stock Omnipresent, What Happened Next, and of course The Colors of Heaven in ebook, as I mentioned. The Gap will be coming out between now and February, and that will also start out in ebook. I may end up selling that one through Amazon. I don't know, because I want it to get out there for other purposes. It's not like paranormal, but yeah. So I've got a lot going on.
Yes, you do. that was quite a bit there, but that's neat. If everybody tries to remember that, I guess the best place for anybody to go, www.lynnmonet.com, and you can figure it all out from there.
Yes. And please excuse me being in my
now,
kitchen
would you like
again.
to tell us a little? There's no problem with your kitchen. Forgive my glowing shirt. They can put up with your kitchen.
Okay. It's true.
I'm just glad it's not my kitchen. My kitchen needs an overhaul. If any of the TV shows that do we help you with your house, or we help houses, or we help kitchens, and you want to make a TV show out of it, you come by my kitchen. It needs a lot of help. It needs to be rebuilt from the support beams under the house to the ceiling.
Oh, wow.
So we are not going into my kitchen.
Okay.
We're yes, it is. Especially kitchen is 12 by 24.
Oh, that's huge.
That's a lot of floor space to replace.
Yes, it is. It is. My kitchen's not anywhere near that size, but I did do all of this myself. So yeah.
Yes, you did. So if you want to come for a real challenge and do a 12 by 24 kitchen, feel free to come down here to Arkansas.
Hey, I'm my boyfriend currently has been talking about doing some mining in Arkansas. So you never know. I might just show up at your house. So we like to do crystal mining, and
what
he's
kind
been
of
talking
mining?
about Arkansas for crystals, amethysts, aquamarines, that sort of thing. Yeah. Anything really, citrine, diamonds.
There is a place,
you name it.
and now I'm in southeast Arkansas. That place, there are two separate places for that. There is a place for crystals, and you can there and basically just get you a handful of crystals anytime you want to. There's also, and this is closer to me, more in central Arkansas, the place where you can go out there, you pay a little fee, and you can go out there and collect diamonds.
Oh, yes, I think that's what he said.
Just a couple of weeks ago, he found somebody about 2 weeks ago found a rather large one.
Oh my goodness!
So
I hope
they
his
were
girlfriend's
ecstatic,
happy.
and it may. I don't know. I didn't see his marital status or what, but with the size diamond that he found, he could take that to a jeweler, and they knew how to cut diamonds, and they could make a sizable ring out of the one.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Either that or a nice pair of earrings for Valentine's Day.
If he comes down here, if he comes down here, just let me know, because that's not that far. I could be there in an hour.
Oh, great. You could come mining with us because he wants to actually buy, what do they call it? I can't think of the word where you buy a section and you mine it. So yeah, we're talking about doing that. Definitely. I'll reach out. We come that way and say hello, maybe have lunch, you know.
It's called staking a claim.
Yes, that's right. That's what it is. That's what it is. That's what we want to do.
That's from that comes from that comes from the old Western style of people who will go stake a claim and mine whatever's in there: silver, copper, bauxite, guano, and there was guano mines out west in the Wild West.
Wow.
Do you know any Spanish?
I know enough
right?
to be able. Pardon me? No, I don't know what that is, but I do know how to ask where the bathroom is for a drink of water. No, guano. No.
Okay.
Guano.
It's more than I know. Batshit.
Batshit. Oh my gosh! Why would anybody want to mine batshit?
Yeah, use it. Ammonia.
Oh, okay.
Before you had the chemicals that you can mix in a plant to make ammonia and cleaner, things like that, use guano.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Well, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That is interesting.
I'm also kind of a fan of the Wild West. Being from Georgia, it sounds like an East Coast. But then I moved to Chicago 14 and a half years and talked to a lot of people in the West. When Chicago was the beginning of the West, when the Wild West started. And of course, Arkansas is the very beginnings of the Wild West. Some was arrested for horse theft here in Eureka,
oh, wow.
Eureka Springs. Yes, that's the same town the Crescent Hotel is. It's been on several TV shows. The very haunted Crescent Hotel is in Eureka Springs. So yes, the same town that the Crescent Hotel is in was where he got arrested.
Oh, so there's a lot of history there.
There's a lot of history. You also got the Allen House here, which has its own stories that I'm not going to go into right now. But the Allen House has been on several TV shows.
There you go.
That house is about 30 miles from where I'm sitting.
Oh, I don't know. That would be a little too close for comfort for me. After purchasing a haunted house as a single mother that I was never able to move into because it was that bad, I don't think I'd even want to be 30 miles away from something like that. So
people actually live. Professor Spencer, he's a professor at the local college in Monticello, actually bought the house and found written evidence that was hidden in the baseboards of his attic about how and why the house is haunted.
Really? Wow. I'd be interested in that. That sounds interesting.
Tonight's show is not about me. Okay. Look up on the internet the Allen House in Monticello, Arkansas. Okay. And you can read all about it.
I will. Maybe when I come up to do Crystal Mine, we'll do that too.
It's about you.
So, okay.
Yeah, we got places to go.
Here you go.
How did you come about and get motivated to write these books?
Well, I've always had gifts. I did grow up in a haunted house that had frequent issues in it. We were a couple of blocks behind a hospital that was connected to a nursing home, and there were also Indian mounds on the other side of that hospital. And my siblings and I would see spirits and Indians walking through our house at different times. A lot of times we would see them walking through when, both of us together, my brother and I together. And we've had a couple of profound things happen as well. But one of the, and I kind of like to tell this story because this is one of the first visions that I really ever had, where my brother and I were in the master bedroom of my parents' master bedroom, and I was in my mother's jewelry box putting on all of her necklaces and earrings and things like that. And my brother was on the floor playing with his Matchbox cars, and there was a misting in the room. And that was my first time seeing what I've learned now is ectoplasm. And ectoplasm usually comes when there's a portal for between the dimensions, or a portal for spirits to kind of travel through. And my brother's best friend, John, presented in this, we were both looking at it, and my brother's best friend, John, presented in this, this misting, as well as his mother, father, and brother. And they were just smiling at us. And I remember both of us running out of the room trying to find my mother. And my brother found her first, and he's like, Mom, John's in your bedroom. John and his family's here. And my mother, of course, she's off doing something. And she's like, well, I didn't even hear anybody knock. So he brings her, he said that they're in your bedroom. And she's like, gosh, they're in my bedroom. Who let them in my bedroom? So, of course, she's coming quickly to usher them out of her bedroom. And, of course, nothing was there. And my brother got in trouble for it. My mother was perturbed because she was in the middle of doing laundry or something. And he interrupted that, and she just thought that it was childhood nonsense. So I also kept my mouth shut too. And also being raised back in the 1960s, I was born in 1963, so I'm going to be 60 years old in May. And yes, I still love my birthdays. That was just something that you didn't talk about. You were, especially, you didn't want to have it get out into the neighborhood, because then you'd be labeled the nutty people. And literally the white men with white coats would come to your house. Back then, it really would come to your house. So the following day was the first day back from spring break, and the kids were going to school. My brother was in second grade, and he would ride the bus, and John would sit with him on the bus, and John wasn't there that day. And so he then got to school, and John's desk was connected to his desk. And again, John wasn't there. And so the teacher then stood up in front of the classroom and made mention that John would not be returning to school because he and his entire family perished in an auto accident on their way back from Disney World or somewhere in Florida. That they had gone on vacation for that spring break. And it happened the day that my brother and I saw them at the same time in my mother and father's bedroom. John was coming to say goodbye to my brother. And so a lot of things happened. Of course, we had the pots and pans that would rattle underneath the cabinets, and different things that happened in the house. And my mother took a jaunt. I had been born and raised Presbyterian, and my mother kind of rerouted to the Jehovah's Witnesses for a little while. And that was not fun. But being 10 years old and having the gifts of second sight and being able to see things, I was brought in front of the heads of the church, which are called elders. And I was the fear, after they told me that I was seeing demons, that I was possessed, they had this thing called Armageddon that was going to happen, that everybody dies but them, and you won't get to make it into that new order, as they called it, if you weren't perfect. So, it scared me so bad that I became afraid of my own gifts. And I would then see things and run out of a room just as fast as anybody else, thinking that it was a demon, even if it was somebody like my great-grandmother or an uncle that had passed away. I was like, and I'd run off too. So coming forward, I purchased a house as a single mother. I'd gone through a divorce, and I was living in an older single-wide trailer out of necessity after going through a financially devastating divorce. And so I was rebuilding my credit post-divorce, and it took me about 5 years to do that. And I was ready to start looking for a house, so I contacted a realtor, and this poor lady drugged me around for about a year. And on my single parent income, it was hard for me to be able to find something in my price range that didn't have like needing major renovations or needing, maybe next to a stinky paper mill or a dump or something that was undesirable. But this particular house that I wrote the book about, Omnipresent, the cover of the book is a door with creepy hands coming through it. That is an actual event that did occur in the house while my son was sitting on the master bathroom toilet when he was about 7. When that happened, it left him with such post-traumatic stress that to this day, he is 24 years old and will not sleep without a light on. So it disturbed him. It made that kind of an impression on him. But when it came to that house, I was able to connect with people of like mind and also people that were seeing what I was seeing at the same time. So it validated that, and I was able to nurture my gifts. I can tell you some details about that book if you'd like, and then go into some of the other ones, if you're okay with that. You want me to continue
okay with everything except one thing you said earlier.
What's that?
You said you are about to be 60 years old.
Yes, on May 17th is my birthday.
I thought you were in
my what? I'm sorry, you're breaking up just a little bit.
30s.
Well, thank you. I
thought you were in your 30s.
Oh, well, thank you. I'll take that. Thank you very much. Good lighting, I guess. So I actually had my last child at 46. I have 3 children. The first 2 children are Brittany and Austin.
Wow.
Those are their actual names in the book. And then I had a 3rd child after all of that chaos and mess. So I currently have a 14-year-old at home. And my other 2, of course, are grown and gone off. And yeah, I've got a 30-year-old and a 24-year-old. So I kind of spaced them out. But I've been a single mom most of my life. So yeah, I'm really, really lucky to have such great kids. So yeah. But it was awful for me to have to drag them through this haunted house thing.
Yeah, you're younger than my wife. Yes, that would have to be awful. I can't imagine that, not having kids myself. I've been in haunted houses, but it's just me and the wife dealing with. The wife came up in a haunted house. When I moved to Chicago, the house was haunted.
Oh, so, wow.
By the way, my wife will be 61 in June. So she was 60 this past June. And we're both medically retired.
Well, there you go. That's kind of nice, because then you can take regular naps. That's one thing that I've learned that I like being older, is I like taking a nap.
Mm-hmm. Anytime we want to. Like when we have the TV on and the news is on or a movie is on, it's usually nap time right about there. I
hear you. I do. Yeah. I enjoy my naps too, but having kids as little as my daughter was 13 at the time and my son was 7 during this time. And I remember the day that the realtor had called me about this house, and she said, this house is not even on the MLS. My colleague just came back from taking pictures of the inside of this house and outside. And this is a house that's in your price range, and it is too good to be true. And of course, that should have resonated with me because it was too good to be true. So I got myself together and I rushed over to her office. I was there within about an hour, and we got into her car, and she started driving over to the house. She had the printouts of the pictures that her colleague had taken of the house. And I'm looking through these papers and I'm thinking to myself, there's got to be a mistake. I mean, this house was selling for $133,009, and what I was looking at was 2,400 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, formal dining area, breakfast nook. It had a large family room downstairs with a stone fireplace and a huge 13 by 15 bonus room downstairs that was for anything that you want. It was a nice house, and I'm thinking to myself, this house could have easily have sold for $100,000 more than what they were asking. So I asked her to call her colleague more than once to ask and say, are you sure that this price is right? Did you maybe make a mistake and put a 1 instead of a 2? And no, it was correct. And then I had her call back again because I'm like, okay, well, then there's got to be something wrong with the neighborhood. And is there indoor plumbing? I mean, I couldn't understand how this price was this low, but yet I was thrilled to get to go see it. And, I'm like, is there a dump at the end of the street? What's the matter with it? Do the neighbors have a sinkhole? And it was none of those things. It was a house on a dead end street. It had low taxes, excellent schools. It was in walking distance of the hospital, which was ideal for me being a nurse. And I mean, it was a really nice house. And also it was built in 1976. And a lot of times people assume that because a house, that they think of an old house as the house that's haunted. But what I have learned is that a brand new house can be haunted if it is in fact built in the wrong place. And I actually had one of the people, I had multiple denominations of religion over there trying to get the things out. I had multiple witnesses having things happen to them, including my children's friends being attacked while they were in the house. But the thing about this house is I was told by one of the final people that came to do the clearings that if it had been built 3 feet over from where it was, that it would not have been haunted because of where it was placed with ley lines and portals and vortexes and things like that. So, and she also turned and she pointed out the house that was catty corner across the street and the one behind it. And she said, well, I bet that house is haunted and the one behind it is haunted too. And she was actually correct, because when I only owned the house for 8 months, I spent 2 nights in it. I never moved in. I kept going back and forth to the place the mobile home that I was living in. And I have to add, my mobile home was fine. It wasn't me and it wasn't the mobile home. It was that house that had the issues, because a lot of times people would assume that it was something to do with me, which I'll tell you about a little bit later. But so we went to the house and pulled in. It's this big 2-story house. As a matter of fact, my second book, that is in fact the house. And you can see the green face in the kitchen window. I did take those pictures myself. They are not photoshopped. I don't even know how to do that. But these big double entry doors. Yeah. And if you zero in on that window there, you can actually see a face looking back at you out of that window. But as you can see, it's a beautiful home. So we get there, we walk up to the double entry doors, and she goes to get the keys out of the lockbox and the keys won't work. So we're thinking maybe that they had left the wrong keys. And so she tries, and it seems like every time that she would try the lock, then she would say, oh, well, let me just try it one more time. And then it would magically go in, and then she wouldn't be able to get it to turn. And now the key's stuck in the lock. And then, oh, well, one more time. And then she got it to turn. Well, obviously we finally got the door open, but while she's trying to get the key back out, and these locks, I'd like to add, are a key piece throughout the entire time that I lived there. They were a problem. They were actually manipulated by a demon that would run the stairs and the hallways and somehow manipulated those locks. So I go into the house and I start to venture upstairs to the upper floor. When you entered it, it was split level. So you had, off of the foyer, you had descending stairs and ascending stairs. And I went ahead and I went upstairs first to look around. And as I'm walking up the stairs, out of my peripheral vision, I see a young man hanging in the stairwell. And I gasp. And I look then directly at it, and there's nothing there. And so I'm like, why on earth would I even be thinking something so horrible? That, and this house is empty. There's no furniture. There's not even a roll of toilet paper. There's nothing in there. So I continued up the stairs and kind of put that to the back of my mind. And as I got to the top of the stairs, I felt, while I'm admiring this living room with these beautiful windows, imagining my kids sprawled out on the floor, imagining my Christmas tree put between the 2 windows. And I feel this very negative presence come up on me. And I've since have learned from someone too, which I didn't realize at the time when I wrote the book, after being charged by this thing, I literally had to put my hand back behind me so as not to fall backwards on the stairs. And I felt this spider web feeling going across my forehead and cheek, which I've also, after the fact, have felt where portals have been, and people, like when they've crossed away, they've gone through these portals, that's cobwebby kind of feeling thing. So it could have very well been a portal that something was charging through at that point. But at that time, I thought that maybe I had walked into a spider web or something, and I'm brushing off my face. And of course, we have brown recluses in North Carolina, so I was worried that maybe, something had gotten on me. And the idea of something more real, like that spider being on me, helped me not to think about the young man hanging in the stairwell anymore. And I will add that really did happen. According to the next door neighbor who had lived on the street way before anybody else had moved there, even before the road was paved, he did verify that the first family that had lived there built the house. They had a son that was having some problems with depression and drugs, and they were going through a divorce. And when the mother came home, he had hung himself in that stairwell, and she came home and found him. So again, that was verified by the next door neighbor, what I had seen in my peripheral vision. So I asked the realtor if we can come back. I wanted to pick up my kids and bring them back. Someone else had made an offer. The house was then placed on the MLS, like within an hour of the time, that we had, by the time we had arrived there, there were other realtors that were coming to see it between the time that we left and came back. And I found out when we came back the second time that somebody had made an offer on the house. So I had learned the lesson that if you wait, that they disappear, because sometimes I wanted to step back for a day or two and think about it, but by the time I would want to go forward, the house was already gone. So I didn't want that to happen with this one. I mean, this house, as a single mother, I would have been so proud to be able to give my children such a beautiful home to live in. And so I said a little prayer, and I made the bid, and of course that I got it. But one of the things, just to back up, well, actually two things to back up. My daughter and son, when we arrived at the house, they of course were running down the hallway and picking out their bedrooms. And then they came to the realtor and I and asked if they could go downstairs and look around. And I said, of course. So they went down. My daughter was back in 5 minutes, and she said, "Mommy, I do not want to move to this house." And of course, I'm standing there with the realtor, and I'm embarrassed, and I'm thinking, "What'd you say?" I asked her, I said, "What did you say?" And she said, "There's something strange about this house that I don't like, and I do not want to move here." Well, of course, I'm thinking, oh, she's just being a typical teenager. She's now realizing that we're going to be moving away from her friends, and doesn't realize that they're still like 20, 25 minutes away if she wants to see them. So I said to her, and I should have listened, and I said to her, I said, "Well, that's not a decision for you to make. How could you not like this house? The place that we're living in right now could fit in here 4 times over if you were to stack it on top of itself and side by side." And so I went ahead and I made the bid, and obviously I did get the house. So I assumed, I'm dancing around the room doing the Macarena. I'm so tickled when I get that call, and I'm thinking, this is a gift from God that, we're being rewarded for all of the hard times that we've had. And it actually turned out to be the booby prize. But the very first night, and I want to back up on one thing too, during the closing and during viewing the house, riding with the realtor, I was told that the family had moved out of the house, which they had. I was told that they had relocated for a job, and that they were wanting to sell quickly because now they were between 2 places and paying money to support themselves in both of the houses, and that they had to change jobs and everything. Well, when it came to the closing, none of that was true. It turns out that they were living with the wife's parents 20 minutes away. They were still working at the same place. So I found that odd. And also the fact that they were about 2 hours late to the closing. During the closing, I had gone ahead and signed my papers. And when they arrived, I was trying to make conversation with the wife, and she would not look me in the eye. She stared at her feet the whole time. And I was telling her, I'm like, oh, thank you so much. I'm going to be putting wooden flooring in. And she says, oh, well, that's what we wanted to do. And she's kind of shuffling her feet and still looking at them. After the fact, after I had moved from the house, I did get a hold of the family, and I did find out that on the way to the closing, she and her husband had gotten into a fight when she found out that I had children. She didn't want to sell me the house. So they were arguing, and that's why they were the 2 hours late, because of what had happened to their children in the house, which I'll go into later as well. That's in book number 2. But so moving forward, on our very, very first night there, we went over. I took makings for taco dinner. We were going to have a floor picnic. And I'm in the kitchen. My kids were playing. I was there pulling up carpeting and stripping, trying to save some money as a single person so I could get a higher grade of flooring. And my kids, my daughter comes into the kitchen doorway, and she says, what did you want? I said, I didn't call you. And she said, yes, you did. You called me twice. And in between, I told you that I was coming, and you called me again. And I said, I heard you say that you were coming, but I thought you were talking to your brother. And I said, I swear I didn't call you. And she says, well, I swear you did. And of course, then my son comes in, and he's peering in into the kitchen from underneath her arm. And he says, Mommy, I heard you call her too. So, I'm rationalizing, these things these demons in this young man, they had an intelligence about them. They immediately learned my children's names. They knew that I was the mommy person. So they were starting to play games right off the bat. But I didn't realize it. I was still in denial, and still, in denial of my gifts, even, for that matter. And so I told the kids, I said, well, Brittany's a popular name, and there's probably, we're on a dead end street. There might be another Brittany that lives on the street, and the mom's out front calling for her Brittany to come home. That might have been what you heard. And of course, they were happy with that. So they headed out after dinner to kind of linger in the front yard to attract other kids. But things continued to happen with the house, with lights being turned on by themselves, with water being turned on by itself. And one time in particular, I had gone over to the house, and I was going to put a fresh coat of paint on the ceilings. And when I went into the house, all of the peripheral doors were unlocked. So I went over to the neighbors across the street to see if maybe somebody had a key, because the house had sold so fast that they didn't even get a chance to put a for sale sign in the yard. So I thought maybe that the previous owner had entrusted someone with a key, since they had moved out, to keep an eye on the house, and that maybe that person came in. I was not planning on changing the locks on that house until we moved in the summer months. I had purchased it in March, and it needed to have some renovations done. I was going to have my children's new furniture delivered. So I didn't want to change the locks until all of the work was done right before we moved in, since I would be having workers come and go. So, of which didn't stay very long. I'll tell you about that too. I had 4 different workers, and only one of them stayed because he was stoned all the time, and that was the last one. But the rest of them didn't stay past 2:00. So I went over across the street, of course, introduced myself, and asked if anybody had a key, and they said no, not that they were aware of. So things kind of continued and kind of amped up when we slept the 2 nights there. I had taken blow-up mattresses and had put them down in the bedrooms. And my daughter, actually, the first night, had a friend also named Brittany come along with her. They were besties, and it was a school night, and her parents said that she could. So we went over to do the sleepover, and her friend got up during the nighttime to get Oreos from the kitchen, and something spooked her so badly that she would not even go into the bathroom without my daughter along, and she didn't get the Oreos. She left them on the counter and came back and got my daughter, and then refused to go back into the kitchen. So, and also 2:00 in the morning, I get awakened and she wants to go home. Well, how many 13-year-olds at a sleepover want to go home? Usually they want to stay up all night giggling, and definitely don't want to go home. So I ended up having to have her call her parents and have them comfort her. And she ended up sitting up awake most of the rest of the night, and was the next morning everybody got up and left. But things really, really started to amp up during our second visit. I actually took my dog to that visit. We had a little dog. It was a Schnauzer, and she would not go in that house. She kept pulling at her leash to the point that the collar came over her head. So I put her on a lead in the front yard, thinking that maybe she needed to go to the bathroom, and she, was happy out there. And then ended up having to carry her in the house when it was time. But that particular day, she came to the kitchen and she was trembling. And I didn't realize that an event had happened downstairs where my son and daughter were in that family room. The dog also was, when a demon presented itself to them. The dog was literally trying to dig a hole in the drywall to get out around the door because she was so frightened. And when she came up to me, I thought maybe that she was cold. So I wrapped her up in a towel and she wouldn't take her eyes off of me. But just to say this too, when I did purchase the house in March, I planned to let my children finish out their school year because they only had 8 weeks left in their schools, and then moving in during the summer months. So I was still living away from the house, thank goodness. I can't imagine if I had moved all of my stuff in there, how bad it would have been if we were stuck in that kind of negativity. So, and I figured then my kids too could meet people kids in the neighborhood and then start, at the beginning of the school year fresh. So anyway, that particular night, if you want me to tell that story about what happened that second night when things amp up, I'll be happy to do that.
Well, you've had some experiences. That's amazing. It's kind of hard for me to comment on such stuff.
Well, that's okay. I just
every indication.
I did. And keep in mind too, that because of the brainwashing that I received and the fear that was placed into me when my mother did that jaunt through from Presbyterian to Jehovah's Witness, where I was told that I was possessed and that what I was seeing was demons, I was still on that same track of denial. So I'm denying and I'm not really paying attention to things. And not only that, I really wanted that house. It was a beautiful house. And at that point too, even if something had been wrong with the house, I had already signed on the dotted line. It was not like I could go to the bank and say, here, you can have your mortgage back. So I had to make the best, of the situation. And my children were seeing things happening and they weren't coming forward and telling me until it got to that second night where I couldn't really deny it anymore either. So many things started to really, really amp up at that point. And I'll be happy to share that with you if you'd like.
Just keep on going right where you're going. Just
okay, I'll keep on going. Okay, the second night that we went there, as I made mention, the dog would not go into the house. Finally carried her inside, and that incident that occurred. So I had two queen size blow up mattresses, and my kids ended up dragging them into the master bedroom, and they put the little TV in between them when they were watching Hidalgo. And I had been working so hard on the house, and it seemed like every room there was something started in and nothing finished. And I wanted one room completely done and decorated so I could go in and close the door and pretend like I'm done. So I decided to take on the master bathroom. And because it was small, I could put a fresh coat of white paint on the ceiling and paint the walls and then let them dry and get all the decorations up in there the next day. So I finished painting. And of course, I had the windows open in the house. And of course, living in a mobile home, you can't have your windows open because it's not a luxury, it's an invitation. So it was a very nice treat to be able to have the windows open and the fresh air coming in. So I had finished painting the bathroom. My kids had fallen asleep, and I left and went to the kitchen to clean up my paintbrushes. And as I'm cleaning them, I go to leave. And when you exit the kitchen opening, the kitchen doorway, immediately there is the wrought iron railing to keep you from falling down the descending stairs. It was also the stairrail that the young man had hung himself from. And as I'm walking forward, I see this swiftly moving creature coming up the lower stairs, across the double entry doors, up the ascending stairs, and shooting down the hallway right in front of me. And I froze. And I'm like, what on earth is that? This creature looked wolf-like. It was standing up on its haunches. The feet were moving so rapidly below its body that there was just fluttering. It had a large tail on it, like a squirrel. It had ears on it like a rabbit, long ears, but they were on each side like the FTD man instead of on the top. And they were grazing backwards over its shoulders. And it was kind of hunched with its feet, with its upper feet forward with nasty looking nails. It looked brown in appearance, and like the skin was sunken in over bone, and it was fragmented looking almost. And I'm standing there and I'm seeing this and I'm frozen. And I'm like, there's got to be some logical reason for this. Number one, I've been painting and there's been fumes. It's been a while since I've eaten anything. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I'm seeing things type thing. And all of a sudden I hear my dog growling down the hallway. So that kind of snapped me out of my funk. And I was also thinking too that maybe a bicycle went underneath a street light outside or something, because there weren't window dressings yet on all of the windows, but it couldn't have come up like that and gone across and then up again and then down the hallway. I later found out that that is called a hell dog, is what that was. But so I go down the hallway to see when my dog is growling. And of course, I don't want her to wake up the children. And when I go to walk in there, she's in the master bedroom, about a foot back from the door frame inside of the room, and she is growling ferociously, and her hair is up on her back, and she is fixated on that doorway opening. And even when I walked through, she briefly put her ears back, but then they came right back up, and she continued to growl at the doorway. And that particular night, my son had taken a bath the night before. He had on shorts and a t-shirt of Bob the Builder or whoever it was that was his favorite, Batman or something. And I could see his body. And there's a reason why I'm mentioning this to you. So I go in, I shower, I lay down with the kids and go to sleep. I wake up the next morning and my daughter, I asked her, I said, how'd you sleep last night? And she said, I didn't. She said, I felt like there was something standing in the doorway all night long staring at us. When my son got up, he had bite marks on his legs. He had bite marks in 3 places on his legs. They looked like dog bite marks. They were purple. You could actually count the teeth, upper and lower. Now, my dog wasn't prone to biting, for one thing, and her bite would have been larger than this. It was bigger than a rat, and it was smaller than my dog's bite, more like maybe a little bit larger than a cat bite might be left, a little bit bigger than that. And he had them in 3 places. And when he got up, I said to him, I said, Austin, you've got bite marks on your legs. What happened? And he's looking down and he's touching them. And he's like, I don't know. But, you know, if somebody were to be bitten like that enough to leave bruises and indentations on your skin like that, you would feel it. It would hurt. And these bite marks occurred during the night while he was sleeping. So we got up and we left that morning, and I was feeling a little bit creeped out. So we waited a little while to go back. I was working as a nurse, Baylor shift on the weekends, which meant that I would promise to work long hours on Saturday and Sunday so that I could have Monday through Friday off to be home and be a stay-at-home mom with my kids. So it was butt up against that, and I was going to be going to work that weekend. But still, the whole thing kind of creeped me out. But then when you're kind of away from it, you start to rationalize and think that you're being silly. And maybe he got those bite marks from his Toy Story dinosaur that he has or something. He might have been pressing up against something. And also the fact that during that time, my single wide trailer sold. So I had like 30 days to move. So I'm having to try to move forward on these things. And I had renovations that needed to be done in the house. And the first 2 had reasonable things for the reason why they didn't come back. The first one had fit me in between jobs that he was doing for construction, and one of them reopened. The second one said that somebody was in the hospital, but he left his DeWalt tools. he never even came back to be paid. And I mean, there was a drill and a saw. I mean, these are expensive tools that he left. And when I called him and reached him, he did tell me that somebody was in the hospital and to leave his DeWalt tools outside in a box where he would be able to get them, but yet it would be in a safe enough area that wouldn't be obvious for somebody. And they sat there for 2 weeks and he never came to pick them up. But when I tried to reach out to him again, his phone number was disconnected. So I got free tools. But the third person that came to the house was actually a cousin of a co-worker of mine. And I actually got to find out what was happening in the house to the workers. And like I said, the fourth one was stoned all the time. So he carried his own demons with him. And yeah, they didn't bother him because he was part of the group. So anyway, my friend's cousin, as I mentioned, was helping me with the floors this one particular day, and so much more happened before all of this, of different things. There was a second demon that's described in the book, but this particular person was in the house with me. I was in the hallway painting. He was in my son's bedroom laying down the wooden flooring. It was a tongue and groove flooring with adhesive. And I'm standing in the hallway and I turn and I see this young man, brown hair parted down the middle, feathered back. He had on a white Oxford shirt, blue jeans, penny loafers, no socks, kind of 80s style, coming up my stairs from the foyer. And he was so real that when I turned, I said to him, I said, "Did you knock?" And Bobby's in the room hearing me say that. And he says, "No, I must have dropped something. He thought I was talking to him." So when I turned directly to look again at the stairs, there was nothing there. And I realized at that point in time that there was a ghost. So now I'm like, oh, okay. It is a ghost. I can't deny this. This is who's been turning on and off the lights and turning on and off the water, and who's been, messing with the locks and moving things and all of the things that were happening, scaring the kids, scaring the dog kind of thing. So I was a little bit spooked by it, and I got my things together and I left. It was time for me to go and pick up my kids. It was about 2:30 when I left. So I'm sitting in the car line to pick up my kids and I get this call, and it's Bobby, and he is panicking and he's like, "I have to leave right now. There's something about this house that I've never experienced before in my life," and the line drops. And it took me about a half an hour before I was able to reach him. And by the time I did reach him, he was like, "Oh, it was nothing." He didn't want me to think that he was a weirdo, So he says, "Oh, it was nothing, but I'd rather be there when you're there." And I explained to him, I said, "Look, my furniture's coming in next week. I really need the flooring done. Feel free to stay there, go back. You can even bring your girlfriend, stay the weekend, because my daughter's room was set up and the electric was on, the refrigerator was going." And he never went back. So I asked my friend at work, I said, "Listen, if you get a chance to ask your cousin what happened in the house and why he didn't come back, because workers, I can't get them to stay. And I want to know what's happening. And I wonder if it's something paranormal." And so she did ask him what had happened. And after I tell you this part, I'll go back and tell you what happened in the rest during that day. He was sitting in my son's room on a garden seat with wheels, and he had a trowel and a block of wood and a mallet to tap the tongue and groove flooring into place after putting the adhesive on it. And he went to reach for his tools, and they weren't there. So he kind of scooted over, thinking that he had, run over them, and they weren't there. And he looks over, and about 7 feet away is the door. And right in front of the door, paralleled, lined up, 1, 2, 3, are those tools. And he's like, "Yeah, I didn't do that, but maybe Lynn came back and is playing a joke on me, and she snuck into the room and moved the tools, and I just didn't hear her." And so he got up and he picked up the tools and he started calling for me out in the hallway. And of course I wasn't there. So he was a little unnerved. So he turned on his transistor radio with battery operated radio, and turned on the light and sits back down and starts to put in another piece of flooring with adhesive, and all of a sudden the light turns itself off and the radio turns itself off, or maybe it was the other way around, but one turned off after the other. And he's sitting there hearing the tools scooting behind him and lining up. He's watching them lining up in front of that door. And he said that he couldn't get out of there fast enough. So, and understandably, so he was frightened by that. And that's what had happened to him. So when he left that day, there was an air conditioner in the window, and the windows opened like this, not the up and down windows. They were older windows that you would crank and they would open like this. So I had an air conditioner that didn't really fit that well into the window, and the screen was off. And when he left, he didn't secure anything. And that was one of the things when I got a hold of him, I wanted to find out from him. And he said no, that he hadn't. So I ended up having to go back. It was on a Friday. I was going to have to work my bailiff shift Saturday and Sunday. So I wasn't planning on returning to the house until about Tuesday. And the windows couldn't be left all of that time. It was kind of rainy too. It had gone into April at that point. So, April showers bring May flowers. I didn't want anything to be damaged. So I asked my neighbor, Ellen, if she would go back with me to the house and help me pull the air conditioner in so that we close the windows and secure the house. And she went with me. So as we're driving down the road, I'm explaining to her about the ghost that I saw coming up the stairs into the living room area. And I asked her, I said, "Are you afraid of ghosts? Do you believe in ghosts?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, I believe in ghosts." And I said, "Well, I think there's one in this house." And I said, "When we get there, if you're not comfortable with going in with me, I'll go ahead and get the neighbor's husband across the street to come in and help me pull in the air conditioner from the second floor window." And she said, "Oh, no. She says, "I don't mind going in there." So we arrived. And of course, now I'm having the trouble with the lock and the key. And I have the door open, and Ellen is standing in the foyer, and I'm trying to struggle and get this key out of the lock. And all of a sudden, Ellen makes a joke. And that's one thing you do not want to do. You do not want to mock them. They do have an intelligence, and they're not pets, type thing. So, you don't mock them. Well, they targeted her. And so we went into the house. We went into the bedroom, pulled in the window, secured the windows, shut everything. And I wanted to show her something that I had gotten from my older daughter's bedroom. My older daughter wanted a wild horse theme, and I had gotten these beautiful hand wooden carved Morgan horse heads to drape her valance over her window. So we went into the kitchen, and Ellen is literally holding one of the heads in each of her hands. And I hear this electrical sound like a didgeridoo, a wah, wah, wah kind of sound. And there again was this misting floor to ceiling that was kind of closing in on us. And I could see it and I could hear it, but I didn't say anything. Ellen's back was to the misting coming in, the ectoplasm coming in. And all of a sudden she says, "What's that sound?" And I'm like, "Can you hear that?" And she's like, "Yeah, what is that sound?" And then she started screaming. She dropped the horse heads on the counter. She starts grabbing her shirt, screaming, "It burns, it burns. What is it, a spider bite?" She's trying to see if there's a bug on her or something. And I lift up the back of her shirt, and she has a 4-inch claw mark diagonal between her shoulder blades, down a little bit lower underneath her bra strap where it was connected. 4 inches. And the thing about this wound was that it was a fresh wound. It was welting and just starting to bead blood. And being a nurse, also a wound care, I've been taking special classes for wound care, so I'm licensed for wound care. This is a reaction that happens with an initial wound. This is not something that even if you pick a scab off, that welting process and beating a blood thing doesn't really happen. So I said to her, I said, "Ellen, what happened? There's no furniture in their house. There's nothing that she could have scratched herself on." So I'm like thinking maybe the car door, that she was getting out, and the window, corner might have scratched her. And then she starts screaming again. And now she's got a claw mark on her belly, underneath her belly button, off to the side. And it's doing the same thing. It looks like a single cat scratch. So, I mean, I told her, I said, you know, you need to go to the car right now. There was one more thing that I had to do really quick to make sure that the house was, you know, something was turned off in the kitchen or whatever. And they weren't attacking me, they were attacking her. So she went ahead to go out. I was very quickly behind her after I did whatever it was that I needed to do. And, you know, at that point, I wasn't even going to mess with that lock. I was not going to get stuck with the key trying to get it in or out. So I just locked the knob lock and closed the door, and we left, because I figured at that point, if anybody wanted to break in, that house could take care of itself. So that was the first night that I got home, and I actually got on my computer and started looking for paranormal services, and for the first time in my life. And, you know, I'm going through all of these services, and they all want to come and take pictures, but they don't want to come and get the ghosts out of my house. And I assumed that, you know, that this problem could be addressed, that, you know, you have a blessing, you get the priest, you get somebody, but it's not a topic that you can just go talk to anybody about. So I had been working at the facility that I was in at that point for probably 5 or 6 years, and it was Episcopalian based. So I mentioned it to the priest that was the priest over the church there. And he of course had known me for those years. We had a rapport. He knew that I wasn't crazy, and he listened and he believed me, and he directed me to the Catholic diocese in Charlotte, North Carolina, of which I spoke to the archbishop. I went that high, and I was basically told that they don't do exorcisms on people, they do it on houses only. And I'm like, well, wait a minute, there's nothing wrong with me. It's not me, it's that house. So I ended up calling a paranormal group from Georgia. Father Andrew Calder was the priest that came out, and he has since passed away, but he is well known in our community, especially if you've been in Georgia. And he came up to do a blessing, and it took 2 days. I mean, he came up the day before, set up his infrared cameras, did his EVP readings, and then did the blessing the next day. And the Presbyterian priest that I had then reached out, not priest, minister, after I had reached out to the archbishop and really got nowhere, I then reached out to the Presbyterian minister, because I was still Presbyterian at that point, to help. And he even came forward and said that he was more afraid of the Bible thumpers in his church than even what I was telling him was in my house. I literally went through the yellow pages, calling every single church in the yellow pages, and I would get comments like, well, if you went to our church, you wouldn't be having this problem. When they overheard that I was a single mother, they assumed that I was being promiscuous and doing activities that in their mind would bring these this incident on to myself. I mean, at that point, I hadn't even been out on a date in 3 or 4 years. So of course that wasn't true. You know, I was focusing on my kids. So you know, I understood that they were scared and didn't know what to do either about it. And their slogan was, "What would Jesus do?" Well, Jesus would have helped me, but I understood that they were human and didn't really have an understanding of what to do either. So the Presbyterian priest was there with the Presbyterian minister was there with the Episcopalian priest. And he said that he wanted to be involved because just in case somebody from his church ever comes up with this problem again, he wanted to know how to help them, since no one seemed to know how to help them in his church. So the blessing went on. I was told at that point that I could start bringing the children back. I didn't return with my children after that second night. After my son got the bite marks on his legs, they did not come back. It was months before I brought them back. And after this clearing, I was told that I could bring them back. So I did. I brought them back. My son brought a friend with him, and they were out front climbing the tree out front. And my daughter was upstairs in her room, and I was down in the garage filling the lawnmower with gas to mow the grass. And all of a sudden, my son's friend Zach comes in through the foyer, down the stairs, and into the garage area where I was. And he's holding the side of his neck, and he's wincing. And he's walking over and I'm like, what happened? Are you okay? And he says, I don't know. It just hit me. And I said, what hit you? Did Austin hit you with a stick? What happened? Did you fall out of the tree? And I take his hand away and I look and there's nothing there. And then he starts to retch. And I'm like, oh my God. I knew what it was at that point, because they can make you so extremely nauseated that you almost feel like you can't breathe. So I got him to the car and I called out to my kids and I said, it is time to go. Go to the car. Do not come down the stairs into the garage. Go out, the front door. Do not come down here. Well, my son immediately went to the car, but my daughter did not hear me say that. So when my daughter came down the stairs, she came down to the lower level, just like Zach did. When she hit that bottom stair, she was like, oh my God. She says, it burns, it burns. She said that it felt like her ankle had twisted around 3 times backwards and she could not bear weight. That is how bad it was. She was crawling and I had to help her hobble out of that garage into the car. Then I closed the garage door from the outside and pulled the front door shut from the outside and locked it, and we left. And of course, as we got off the block and started heading home, the kids all started to feel better. But when I got home, I called that priest and I said, they're not gone. They're attacking my kids now. I can't take it. I'm not going to stay there. I'm not going to live in this house anymore. And he's like, oh, no. You need to state your ground. You need to, insist that it's your house and you need to make them leave. And I'm like, my house is supposed to be my sanctuary. And there is no way that I would rest in peace in this house. And not only that, what if I had extended family over for Christmas or Thanksgiving dinner and I saw a ghost walk across the room and I had to stand up screaming at it to get out of my house in the name of Jesus Christ? How many guests do you think are going to stay for the entire dinner? And not only that, nobody's going to want to invite me to their house because I might be bringing more than dessert. So I told him, I said, I can't do it. As a mother, your children, your children, they come to you with complaints of something being under their bed or in their closet. In this house, they really was something under the bed and in their closet. Might even be in bed with them. And what kind of mother would I be, having my kids running to me for help and we're all huddling in my bed getting the covers pulled off? I said, there is no way. But he did have me agree to have a Catholic priest come in there that had kind of been lined up by the Presbyterian minister. So I went and I picked up the priest and brought him to the house. And that poor man was so scared that he was trembling. And the bad thing about negative spirits is they feed off of negative emotions and it strengthens them so that they can do more physical acts. And he was just shaking with that Bible in his hand. And he went down that hallway so fast, squirting holy water into the rooms from the doorway, didn't even go in them. He was done with that blessing in 10 minutes. I mean, the one that Andrew Calder did took 2 days. So, but he just couldn't wait to get out of there. And he did not speak one word to me as I took him back to the church and almost fell out of my car trying to get out to get away from me. So he actually ended up making it worse with the demon thing. But I did end up in moving forward again. More things happened that are in the book, and I went ahead and I listed it for sale by owner. And I got a call from this couple that had 3 children. She had grown up in the area in a similar house and really wanted to raise her kids in a house like that. And so my mother and I were cleaning the house, getting it ready to be shown. And I made the mistake of making the appointment in the house where I could be overheard by the spirits that were still lingering there. And so the next day, we're supposed to meet these people. My mother and I arrive at the house an hour early. We brought some towels and plants so that we could do some stage playing so that it didn't look so bare. But nothing else was in this house. There was no garbage. The toilet was flush. There was no food, no cleaning products, nothing. The house was spotless. It was clean. And as we're walking up the sidewalk to the house, my mother looks up to the window and she said, Lynn, did you get the windows on the house tinted? And I'm like, well, no, why, so I'm looking up at the top windows And they had vertical blinds in the bedrooms, but you couldn't even see the divisions of the vertical blinds. It was like dark. And then I looked down to the lower level and there were flies. There were flies speckling all over the downstairs windows, and they were so thickly coated on the upstairs windows that the windows looked 3D, moving. And I'm like, oh my God, those are flies. My mom's looking too, and we were expecting to be swarmed when we finally went into the house, and here these people are coming in an hour. So we opened the door, we went in, and the flies didn't swarm us. They were trying to get out of the house too. But there were no maggots, there were no hatchlings, there was nothing to indicate where those flies had come from. And there were hundreds of thousands of flies in that house that were fully grown. And they had been there so long that they had left excrement all around the molding around the window in the kitchen area. And there were these 3 windows that were side by side in the breakfast nook area that were painted shut, and the handles to open the windows were broken. The glass wasn't broken, the handles were broken, they would just spin. And there were literally flies stuck between those screens and the glass panes, and the screens had no holes either. So I don't even know how they got there between the panes and the screens on the outer side. So I had to take the screens off of the windows and usher the flies into the house. And then we had the screens off of the window in the kitchen front to usher them out, as well as the sliding glass door. And we had to go from room to room getting these flies out and trying to clean up this fly poop, before the people got there. And fortunately, the people called and had to reschedule, which I didn't find until after they were about 20 minutes late, and I checked my phone. So this time I made an appointment for them to come back the next day while I was driving with my mom in my car. And they wanted to make it for the next day. So we go back the next day. And of course, we go 2 hours early this time, and there were no problems. There were no flies. The house was clean. There were no issues. And the people came, and they brought 2 of their 3 children. There was an older child that was not with them. And the kids, again, like my kids did, run down the hallway. They're picking out their bedrooms. And one of the bedrooms was kind of small. And of course, everybody wants the bigger bedroom. So they asked if they could go downstairs and look around downstairs. And they went down, and sure enough, they were back up in 5 minutes. And the little girl looked like a deer in headlights. And I overhear her saying to the brother, Tommy can have the creepy room downstairs, which was the 15 by 13 foot room. I'll take the smaller room upstairs. So in that moment, I realized that I couldn't bring myself as a mother to sell the house to anyone with children. And yes, I had to sell it. I couldn't afford to pay for 2 places to live. If I could have afforded it, I would have burnt the house down to the ground and left it. And I couldn't afford to pay a mortgage for the demons to live there. So I had to sell it, the same as the young couple had to sell it to me. I understood. So I did put the house up for sale by owner. I got a retired couple that came up from Florida that did a cash buy on the house. And as we were leaving the house, after signing some papers, their adult daughter was with them. She exited the double entry doors first. I exited them second. And then the wife and husband were behind me. And I overhear the wife saying to the husband, "Why did you push me?" And he said, "I didn't push you." And she said, "Yes, you did." And he said, "No, I'm 3 steps back from you. I can't even reach you, and I wouldn't push you anyway." And she's like, "Well, I don't know what happened, but I knew what happened. I knew what pushed her." So when they came out, my conscience got to me, and I was going to tell them that the house was haunted. I didn't want to do to somebody else what had been done to me. So I asked them, I said, "Do you believe in ghosts?" And they immediately cut me off. They said, "We are Baptists. We don't believe in ghosts. We don't discuss those sorts of things, and we're protected." So I'm like, okay. Now, if they had asked me, I would have told them the truth, but they didn't want to hear it. So about 6 months later, which now we go into the second book. And the thing that's unique about my books is there's a self-help section in the back of every book. The self-help section in the back of Omnipresent talks about how to, how to determine whether you have a ghost or not in your house, how to react to your children. The worst thing that a parent can do to a child when they come to them with this sort of complaint. And if it's something, if they've seen it more than once, is to say, oh, there's nothing there, because the child can clearly see that it's there. There are filters that build up over time that thicken, that kind of block that out. Those filters also efface on the flip side when people are getting nearer death, and they can see spirits then too. But, it's to tell them, oh, there's nothing there. You got to ask the child, first of all, is it something that's making you feel uncomfortable? Because if it was, the parents tell them, oh, well, it's your guardian angel or your Aunt Lulu coming to look over you. Well, if it was Aunt Lulu, it wouldn't be scaring the bejesus out of them, and they would feel comfortable with that visit. So the best thing is to tell them to ask it to leave, tell it to leave, start humming something that is spiritual or even religious for that matter, stating the Lord's Prayer, and commanding it to leave, to make it go away. And also to ask when their invisible friend is around, if the invisible friend is asking them to do things that they know they're not supposed to, because then that may not be a child, that may be something impersonating a child. So when I then went ahead and wrote the second book, Omnipresent, Omnipresent, What Happened Next, because so many people wanted to know what happened. Where did we go? What happened to the people that moved in? Did you ever get in touch with the people that sold you the house? And the answer is yes to all of that. The people that bought the house from me ended up putting a for sale sign up 6 months after they had bought it from me, a for sale by owner sign. And I know this because I actually, I was on the interstate and there was a backup, and I had to take this shortcut to get back around on the interstate to get around this backup. And I just so happened to have to pass the street that the house was on. And when I passed it, I saw the sign in the yard, but where it was positioned, it could have been the neighbor's yard too. And so curiosity got the best of me. I went to the next street, turned around, and came back around. And of course, it's a dead end street. So I said a little prayer and I said, please don't let them come out and see that it's me. I wanted to be as inconspicuous as possible and drive down the street. I didn't want them to come out and see me, want to invite me in, because I had no interest in going in the house. So I passed, and sure enough, it was a for sale by owner sign that was in their yard. And so, in that moment, my heart just dropped, because I had hoped that they maybe weren't as sensitive as I was. Maybe some of the things that I did to try to rectify the situation had a delayed response, and that they would be able to live there and have that be their retirement home and live happily ever after. So I felt really, really bad about that. I went to the end of the street to turn around, and as I'm coming back towards the house, I'm noticing that the neighbors across the street have this huge Archangel Michael statue facing the house in front of their house, which they had purchased while I was there. They're seeing all these priests and things coming out, blessing the yard, and Catholic priests, and me talking about ghosts. So they knew that the house was haunted, and they did purchase that statue while I was there, but it was sitting more off to the side, and now it was sitting directly in front. So as I'm passing their house, my radio's off, my windows are up. I'm trying to be very, very quiet, going past the house. And all of a sudden I get in the front of the house and my radio starts blaring. I'm thinking I bumped it with my knee or something. I'm trying to turn it off. I'm trying to change the channel. I can't get it to turn off. I left skid marks getting off of that street. I got to the stop sign and peeled out, just to get off of there quickly. And as soon as I turned off the street, the radio shut itself off, which they can do that. And I knew in that moment that they knew I was there, and they wanted me to know that they were still there in that house. And I couldn't bring myself to go back there. So I did, after seeing that, I did contact the family that sold me the house. I figured that they would be more apt to talk to me. And this is where it starts. It's called the last chapter first. in the second book. It talks about me getting a hold of the family, and they told me about what was happening with their children. They were telling me about how their youngest child, well, actually both of them, you go to school, the one child was like 4, the other one was just a little bit older. And, in kindergarten, they say, oh, draw a picture of your house and your family. So you get this little house with stick people, the little kids draw. But in the case of both of their kids, they were drawing houses with stick people. And then off to the side, they had these 3 darker things off to the side. And when people would ask them what the other 3 things were, they would say that those are the monsters that live downstairs in our house. So they were also being attacked, having bruises and claw marks and bite marks and things like that left on the children as well. People disturbing the husband, working midnights, knocking on the door and mimicking the wife's voice, to disturb his sleep. And then he'd come out, and almost caused a divorce in their family because of the negative activity that was going on in that house. But the book also goes into mental illness and addiction. It talks about those sorts of things that I with the ability to have my second sight regained, seeing those things constantly in that house, getting used to looking what spirits look like, and also being numbed out with them. And again, there was so much more that happened in that book that would be interesting for you to read, even with the spoil alerts. But I went back a little bit later in life to further my degree as a nurse, and I had to do a rotation through a psychiatric ward as part of one of the classes. So I went into this psychiatric ward, and it was the admitting area for the patients to come through. And we actually had to sign papers that if somebody hit us or threw something at us, that we wouldn't, that we wouldn't sue anybody. And this one girl comes up and she points at me and she says, "You can help me. I know you can." And of course, I'm embarrassed, and I'm hoping that she's talking to somebody else and not me. I just wanted to be Lynn the nurse that day, not Lynn the spiritual person, removing attachments off of people and stuff like that. But the teacher came and ushered us out, and she said, "Don't make eye contact with anybody." So I never said a word to the young lady, but I was reassigned to that area. And they had picnic tables that were bolted to the floor, and the nurse, myself and the other nurse that were sent back into that area, we were sitting there doing our charting, and the girl comes over to us and sits down with us, and she starts telling us her story. She was molested by the pastor in their church from age 10 to age 14. And then her mother got remarried, and she was molested by her stepfather, and that she ran away when she was 16 and got into devil worship. And she was about 21 at this time, and she realized that that wasn't the way to go for her either. And now she hears 25 different voices. But while she's sitting next to me, she's got on a tank top with spaghetti straps. She's so heavily medicated, she sounds like her tongue is too fat for her mouth. She was slurring her words. But I'm looking at this woman, and she is covered in claw marks. She's got them in her ear, coming out of her nose, in areas on her back and body that there would be impossible for her to reach. And she was talking about this one in particular that had this long fingernail that was actually scratching her inside of her female parts. And the hospital was claiming that she was doing it to herself. And I'm like, these are demonic claw marks. This woman is being attacked by, invisible forces. And when she got up to walk away, because of my ability to see with second sight, she was diagnosed with schizophrenia. It looked like she had a clear sack the size of a standard pillowcase, one over each shoulder, and they were filled with these potato-looking things that were clustered like grapes, but they were faces, and some of them were inverted, so the eyes were on the bottom and the mouth was on the top, and they were all collected on her back in those 2 places, kind of attached with this horn-like thing at the top of the shoulder, and then it clamped up underneath the arm is how it was attached. And so I'm watching her get up and walk away. They had called her for her appointment with the psychiatrist. And I'm like, no crap. That she's hearing 25 voices. She's got attachments on her back. That's what she is hearing 25 different voices. And so when she returned from her appointment with her psychiatrist, I went into her room and I said, listen, I said, what I'm going to tell you, if you were to tell anyone else, they would think that you are crazy. I said, so, you may not want to mention this, but when you get out of here, you have attachments on your back. That is why you're hearing the 25 different voices. And I could see in her room where there were a few of them kind of clustered around her bed. And I told her, I said, when you get out of here, you need to find someone that can take these things off of you. And I didn't, at the time I was going through a divorce, I was taking care of my mother in my home who had cancer. I had a 2-year-old at the time. I didn't feel spiritually strong enough in that moment to help her. And I didn't want the things following me home, but something just came over me and I took my fingers and I went underneath the cup things and lifted them off, and they all just kind of fell to the floor, and I'm stomping them into the ground. A few of them did roll away, but I told her that they could reattach, the ones that did roll away, and that she needed to go get further help. And lo and behold, about 8 months to a year later, I'm in Walmart and I see these 2 women at the end of the aisle, and one keeps looking at me and talking. So of course I'm checking my shoe for toilet paper, I'm wondering why. And I overhear her saying, I know that's her. And this woman walks up to me and she says, are you Lynn? And I'm like, yeah. I'm thinking maybe she's read one of my books or something. And I'm looking at her, she's kind of familiar, but I'm not sure who she is. And she said, you're the nurse that helped me. This woman looked like a new woman. She had a beautiful bobbed haircut. She was now enrolled in school to become a dental hygienist. She told me that she did do what I told her to do after she got out. And now, not only was she off of her schizophrenic medication, she was now only taking something for mild anxiety. And with that being said, as I continued my rotation through that psychiatric ward because of what I had seen on her, I started looking at other people. And it was like I could pick out the people with schizophrenia a lot of the time because they did, in fact, have attachments. These people aren't talking about pink elephants on the wall. They're talking about hearing voices that are telling them to do things that they should not be doing. So some of my fellow student nurses, I'd say, hey, does your person have schizophrenia? Yeah. How'd you know? Well, because, I didn't say it, but I could see the attachment on their back. And a lot of the people with addiction also had these archon type attachments on their back. They appear like spiders or crabs. Sometimes they're kind of lizard looking. The lizards ones sometimes have a tail or a human butt on them. But the thing that's very distinct about them is that their heads are smaller in proportion to their bodies. They have a fin that comes from the top of the head to the lower part of the head that's kind of floppy, kind of like a shark fin, but it's not rigid, it's floppy. So when they turn their head, it kind of falls over their face, like when they're up on a ceiling or whatever. And I say up on a ceiling because when a person who has gone through treatment for addiction, that they have finally stopped, drinking or drugging or whatever it is that they're doing, smoking, whatever it is, the archon will detach, but it never goes away. It constantly stays in their realm, trying to get them to trip up, trying to get them to start that addiction again so that they can reattach and feed off of the person and the chaos and the negativity that the rippling effect of that drama creates for multiple people, including people in the neighborhood. So, and they thrive on that. Of course, they thrive on the negativity. So I could pick out a lot of the people that were there with addiction versus the ones with schizophrenia. And I thought to myself, if they had some kind of a spiritual person or someone, that had the abilities to see these things, a lot of these people that are diagnosed here with schizophrenia have attachments. And if those attachments could be taken off, they may not have the schizophrenia. So, and really they don't have a reason for schizophrenia. They think they know what causes it, but they really don't know what causes it. So with that being said, also even with addiction, spirits, when they die, they have the choice to cross over or not. And a lot of times addiction will hold them here. Not always. They can cross over and get help with that, but a lot of them choose not to cross over. With my ability to have second sight, I have entered into sports bars and things like that. There was one in particular that there was this couple sitting at the bar trying to get romantic. And there was a dead person standing next to them that was decapitated and had his head sitting on the bar with his nose sniffing the drink, because they still have all of their senses. They can smell, see, and hear. So if you want me to continue, I know I've been going on, kind of hogging the show here, but you said you wanted me to go on. If you'd like me to continue, I will.
I told you at the very first, this show is about you.
Thank you.
I'm on here every week. Sometimes I end up talking a little bit about myself. Some of this I can sympathize with. Some of it I can empathize with, and there's a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Also, one experience that I had similar to what you're talking about, you ever heard of it?
I'm sorry, you're breaking up just a little.
Okay. Have you ever heard of Bachelor's Grove Cemetery?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay. It's one of the most haunted cemeteries in the United States.
Okay.
Because it was desecrated. It had graffiti all of it. It was abandoned in the late 80s.
Oh, how sad.
People would go in there just to get drunk. It was, and there was, of course, bad things. The theory is that I happen to agree is that it's not the cemetery that was bad, it's the area. There was an Indian tribe living the other side of a creek that runs there from the cemetery. And if you said this is in Illinois, by the way, south of Chicago. If you read some of the history, a lot of tribes, smaller tribes, would raid other tribes to get women and children. That's how they expanded their tribe.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a massacre there.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So you really had some bad spirits there. And you're looking at the only person who's ever spent an entire night in that cemetery.
Oh, wow.
Other people have tried.
How'd that go for you?
And they'd go in there. But people have said, well, I spent the night in Bachelor's Grove. I said, well, okay, what time did you get there? Oh, about 1 o'clock in the morning. What time did you leave? About 4.
That's not
Dude,
spending
you
the
spent
night.
about 4 hours in a cemetery. That's not all night.
Yeah.
My wife dropped me off at the cemetery back up at 8 a.m.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
I had no transportation to get out. I left my cell phone at home intentionally. So I had no cell phone.
They would have drained the battery anyway.
No way to leave.
Yeah.
And and one of the first things that hit me about an hour and a half after dark was explosive diarrhea. So I can understand that it's the stomach upset.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I handled it, and it happened. I got rid of it. I said, and it was not the stomach upset. I felt bad happen. It just hit me. It hit me. I could barely get my pants down to get rid of it. And immediately I felt better. Because I said, look, I've got no way to leave. You're not running me off. I'm here all night. I don't care if you like it or not. I'm here for the night. I didn't have any more trouble.
Yeah. because you stayed neutral and you weren't there for the fear factor.
Because
So yeah.
yep, they tried to intimidate. Told them I was not going to be intimidated, and had no more trouble the rest of the evening. I could see shadows, and I could see there was movement there.
Wow.
There was none that night either. I only had starlight and a nearby highway with a little bit of street light, but you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. And I was able to go through there by myself most of the night. I had a paranormal group walk through. I gave them a tour. They left, but I was there the majority of the night, absolutely alone. Not something I'd advise, and you better be sure yourself before you try something like that, because you show the least bit of fear, they will take over.
That's for sure. That is so true.
I could have come out of there schizophrenic, well, because I had a text, and I said, no, that's not going to happen. You're not going to intimidate me like that. Before, during the daytime, and with that kind of framework, I didn't have any problem.
There you go.
Before we get back started, I do need to run my commercial ads. I should have done it 40, 50 minutes ago, but
sorry.
you were going so strong. I don't be sorry about a thing. I could have said no. Let me do this, but I said no. Let's just go with the flow. And this is real quick, and it's very verbal. I do not have the commercialization or the advertisers like Dave Scott. I'm not as good looking either. Just don't tell him I said that, okay?
Oh, I mean, your secret's safe with me. But yeah, no, I'm not going there.
Oh, by the way, one thing about Dave Scott, there's one difference between he and I.
What's that?
Of course, I am some 15, 20 years older than he is. I think you have picked it up because he mentioned it. He touched on it Monday. He is scared spitless of death.
Yes, he said that.
A lot of people are. I mean, that's not just Dave Scott. He is scared spitless of death, and that's to have paranormal people on this show because he wants to try to learn as much as he can about death. At 66, the only thing my wife for me, so she never has to be alone. It's to outlive the wife by any amount of time, so she is never going through the last couple of years or whatever of her life alone. I'll take that baggage because I can handle it. But especially after she's gone, the best part of me would be gone. I'm just going to be the crotchety old man because the best part of me will be gone. But fear it? No. I'm nervous about the pain. I don't want to get bit by a rattlesnake or something and lay on the ground for 10 hours and slowly die of, whatever. But death itself, no.
Yeah.
Let's find out. Let's find out what really happens when you go to the other side.
Okay, we'll do that after the commercials.
Okay, and right now I want to talk a little bit about myself because I got a friend of mine. She's been on the show a couple of times. Her friend does the Gypsy Soul Holistic Fair. She has them in Texas. This was advertised in one in Texas that was this past October, just before Halloween. They also have one in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. I will be with her in, I believe, April. They have not set the date yet. At the Gypsy Soul Holistic Fair. I will be appearing at this. Her and I will be two of the very few paranormal people. This is usually kind of a witches, psychic type meeting. You would be right at home with the people at these shows. So if you're ever in the Texas, Oklahoma area, look up the Gypsy Soul Holistic Fair. And another little thing that I advertise is, of course, show I will be at next October. October 2023. Fearfest Paracon. You'll see it's a lot of TV, not TV, but paranormal podcast networks here. Parapost, Parallax, and Phoenix Rising. The Paranormal Swamp Investigations is a very unique paranormal podcast. They have a lot of fun with their show. And the friend of mine, of course, is the chairwoman of the Fearfest Paracon, Phoenix Jansen. She is also a psychic. People ask me sometimes, do you like to, one of the things they ask a lot of paranormal investigators, do you like to work with psychics? Yes. I made a comment once, it didn't sound right when I said it, that psychics, and they thought that was an insult. You're a fool to leave a good tool in the toolbox. I didn't mean tool as an insult. 9/16, and you don't want to work on a car without a 9/16 inch wrench. And that's the way I look at psychics. You walk in the door and play whatever they want. Some want information. Someone want to know the address. Someone want to know some history. Some want to walk in deaf and dumb and walk in there and see how they feel. Some of them want to go blindfolded to the location, and they sure don't want to hear about it. So whatever they want to work it, I'm game. I've worked in places by myself. I worked without even a good feeler with investigations, with psychics or some kind of intuitive feeler. It's a lot more fun, and to go along with what they're feeling, what they were doing. I'm not quite normal myself. I can go in any location, walk through slowly, and pick out which room I'm going to spend the most of my time in. If I'm with a group, I'll say, okay, I will be in this room 90% of the time. You go and investigate the rest of the place, and I may go walk through the other rooms. And maybe stop in a room. Most of my time is going to be spent in this room. So if you walk in here, more than likely I'll be here. And
Oh, wow.
they look, okay, whatever. Because I can feel where I will get the most activity and the most responses. Mainly because I may be seeing a shadow or an image of somebody or something in the room. And one such place, I was with a psychic. God bless her soul. She is she's in the hospital now, recovering from a knee replacement. But we were investigating a place in just east, about 40, 50 miles east of St. Louis, Missouri, Illinois. And let me just ask you what you think about this. We were in a room. We were interacting with a couple of ladies. They have, like so many places, this hotel, and it was an active, open hotel. They have a staff and people staying there. Well, my wife was asleep in one of the rooms, and we were up investigating, and they don't have one white lady. They have two. There was a woman who died there. She was married to one of the owners. And,
Oh, wow.
and she got another one that was also married to one of the owner's families members,
Mm-hmm.
and she disappeared. His
Wow.
nephew, or he was in the ownership family, lived it and went into a closet that was not being used and built a shrine to his wife. Her pictures, some of her clothes, flowers he'd given her, jewelry she had left behind. And after, I forget the amount of time that passed, they found him dead in that room.
Oh, wow.
Pre-committed suicide. The people at the hotel said one of the two, they're not sure which, haunts that hotel as a white lady of the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
I found out that it's not one, it's two. One was interacting with me, and so okay, this is my life, and
Mm-hmm.
didn't think too much about it. Till I got home and was reviewing the video of the camcorder in my hand, and my wife's looking at the video. She said, "Where is the ghost you're talking to?" I said, "Right there." She has her hand right there in front of my hand. And she said, "Well, who is that?" And the camera was pointed down a hallway, 30 feet. And, and there was a woman standing dressed. She was looking. You could see the expression on her face, like she was not quite understanding why the other lady was standing there talking to a human. She walks. It was an L-shaped hallway, so she walks out of sight. A few seconds later, she comes back. It is standing there looking at her friend, with a look on her face and the posture, are you coming? And the spirit left me and went down the hall, and they disappeared together around the corner. We found out why they left. That hotel, of course, being the location, there's a lot of mob activity in St. Louis and Chicago, and that hotel being 45 miles east of St. Louis was where they met up a lot. It was a hot spring, so they could go there and relax. And of course, the mineral springs help relieve the arthritis and other things that ail you. And this hotel was set up with quite a few bathtubs so you could soak for a couple of hours, and still is. I took one after the investigation. But anyway,
good.
Go into what's being used as a break room.
Mm-hmm.
We were in a massage room that they had there. Went into what the employees used as the break room. And that's where we saw the mob figure sitting at a table. And the psychic looks at me. She said, "I wonder what would happen if I sat down literally in his lap." I said, "Well, there's only one way to find out." She had to sit down in the chair that she knew a ghost was sitting in. So he leaves the chair, and the other two mobsters that were in there with her leaves and goes through the door. And we had a ghost box set up in the room when I was in before, talking to the other spirit, that nothing had come over for hours. We'd been there for about 4 hours. And this is out in the country. So we were picking up no radio stations, nothing.
Wow.
This was a Sunday morning too. There was nothing on. And all of a sudden we hear these loud voices in perfect English, just like somebody screaming down in the room. At the same time, these mobsters go through the door. We tore through the door after them and heard the voice. We leave the room, and it was just before sunrise, but the dark except for the lighting that I had. had some UV, and I had a little bit of IR because I was shooting with a full. And it was still dark in the room. We took 2 or 3 steps, and there was bright sunshine in the hall. And we said, "Okay, what happened? How?" First thing she said, "How did it get so bright in here?" The sun's up. So we went down the hallway to the room we were originally in. Totally mystified how it went from dark to bright.
Wow.
And we're looking at the camera footage when I got home, and the camera had been both running for quite some time.
Mhm.
You heard the static camera. I had one in my hand. It's a camcorder. Post box, and him. I forget what he said. I could review the tape. I heard him say that.
Wow.
Opening the door. And then there are 2 to 4 minutes before you hear us say, how come it's so bright in here all of a sudden? We said that within seconds of each other. We heard the voice. We took about 3 steps at a running pace. And we said, why is it so bright in here? Those 2 things were just a few seconds apart.
Wow.
But on the second camera, the static cam, we're almost 5 minutes apart. Enough time for the sun, which must have been just on the horizon, maybe not quite shining in the building window, to where it was shining window.
Wow, what an amazing story.
Come up with was that the open the portal, of course, to go back to the other side where spirits are. And that we were right on their heels and ran into the portal.
Wow.
And came out of the portal by us immediately. We just took a couple of fast steps.
Mm-hmm.
What would it have been like had we had a third person investigating and been standing in that room, watched us come out of the employee break room and disappear? And what would you have said?
I would have been like, wow. Yeah, definitely stepping through a portal or through the veils of the dimensions, between the dimensions. Yeah, that would have been huge. I mean, yeah, definitely to get that on film, that would be a big deal.
Both of us soon after got cancer. I got, fortunately, just a little bit of skin cancer here on my liver that I had removed. She got cancer that almost killed her.
Yeah, that happens.
So
yeah,
coincidence? I don't
not a
believe too much
coincidence.
in that kind of serious coincidence.
No, they're negative vibration and the things that can
Human beings are
exacerbate
not
it.
meant to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's not a coincidence. I've seen
And
that happen also.
she had her, really?
Yes. I
She
have
had
my
her problems with her husband. And she is now, when she got her cancer, she got out of the paranormal. She's still out of the paranormal. She's not getting back in.
That's the thing about those negative spirits, is they can exacerbate things. My friend Ellen that went into the house with me to pull in the air conditioner, after that, she was riveted with cancer as well and ended up dying. Yes. And I had a gentleman that had come to the house who had Meniere's disease. He had Meniere's disease, and his Meniere's disease had been in remission for like 4 years. And he had the most severe attack the very next day after being in that house. And he at first didn't think anything of it. So after he balanced it back out, he then came a second time to the house. And again, that afternoon and into the next day, he was hit again with very, very severe Meniere's, with the ringing in his ears and the dizziness that he was incapacitated. And I realize, with that being said, they can exacerbate things in your system. They can, definitely they can do that. At least I believe that they can. And with that being said, my friend Ellen, out of the blue, she went and had biopsies done, 18 of them, of different areas on her body, and all 18 of them came back positive for cancer. So, like the skin, like you said, but then it went into her lungs and her, some other areas that ended up taking her life. So I believe that. And that's why, too, it's important that people don't live in a house. They think that having a ghost in their house is harmless. Oh, yeah, we've got this ghost in our house and it's harmless. It's a lady and she wanders. But they don't understand the negative pull, even though that ghost may not mean to, and maybe they're full, tucking their kids in at night or something. It's still the vibration that they carry, if they have not crossed over, is a negative pull. It's kind of a sucking effect. And they need to be around the humans to feed off of them in order to be able to be seen, to do physical acts, even if they're not bad ones. So, yeah, it's not a good idea to have a ghost in your house, even if it's a nice one. They definitely need to cross over. And the thing is, too, is a lot of these lost souls that end up staying here for whatever reason, the only thing that stops you from crossing over is yourself. You can choose not to cross over. And a lot of times people choose not to cross over for religious beliefs. They don't feel that they're worthy, maybe an addiction, maybe they're watching over a loved one, for a period of time, and then they cross over before the loved one does. I actually have a story about a ghost that in the facility that I was working in, which is in The Colors of Heaven, the book that's coming up. I call him Dapper Dan in my book because I was in front of a patient's room, and the lady was actively transitioning, and I was getting her some medication to help dry up secretions. And I am standing next to the sitting area that had pillars, and I see this ghost peeking out around the pillars. And I said, hi, and he's looking over his shoulder literally to see who I'm talking to, because probably he hasn't been spoken to in 100 years. So, and I said, no, you there. Well, why are you here? Why haven't you crossed over? And he realized that I was talking to him, and he kind of started to come towards my cart. And he was a handsome man. He looked to be maybe 35, maybe. And he was dressed in nice clothes, like of the 18th century type clothes. He wasn't like upper class. He was like upper middle class, maybe. And the thing about spirits, when they haven't crossed over, we all do keep all of our senses, whether we've crossed over or not. But souls that have not crossed over, they still have their addiction issues. They still have any mental illness that they had. The cause of death usually shows, in his case, he had a Swiss cheese appearance to his abdomen, which to me indicates a corrosive disease, like cancer or cirrhosis of the liver might have been the cause of death. And he came over, and I'm like, well, I've got this lady here getting ready to cross over. And if I can hook you up, basically, which, not that he needed that, but I didn't want him to feel that he would be going alone. And he told me he had this very heavy Irish brogue. And he said to me, "My lady, I can't cross over." And I'm like, well, yeah, of course you can cross over. why can't you cross over? And he said, my mistress and my wife are on the other side, and neither one knew about the other. So this ghost, this man, had decided to remain earthbound all of these decades, because he didn't want to cross over and have to be confronted and face the mistress and the wife who didn't know about each other. And I even said to him at that point, and I said, look, the cat's out of the bag now. I can promise you that they know about each other. Emotions are different on the other side. They have a better understanding. There's not that jealousy or anger or animosity. I said, not only that, they may not even be there anymore. They might have gone off to another solar system, or gone off, and reincarnated, or, something. They might even be in a lifetime, married to somebody else. So, and I told him too, I said, I can see you and I can help you cross over. And most people that could see you would run off screaming in the other direction that they've seen a ghost. So, let me help you. And he just kind of smiled and faded away. And I never saw him again. So I'm not sure what happened with that. But, people, they do stay earthbound, for certain things. But there is that negative pull when they do that. And a lot of times too, when there are ghosts here, they sometimes are controlled by something more malevolent. Something darker. Sometimes they'll have like a demon or some kind of being that's more negative that kind of controls them, type thing. You'll hear about that too. And so anyway, yeah. So I hear what you're saying, and yeah, people shouldn't have ghosts in their house.
Let me comment on that, but I got to run. I run this little thing. It's a little bit late. It's 14 after. We might as well say a quarter after. But
okay,
when we go into overtime, and
okay,
we
that's
are
fine.
Time. So give me about 20 seconds.
Okay.
I just about got shut down.
Okay.
Wow. We were completely off for a second. But yes, we're in overtime. And this is one of the perks of WLFE, which is my network. Well, it's not mine. It's the one I'm on. Got him. Ted runs this network. He owns it. And he put me on late at night. One, I have faster internet this time of night than I would at 8 o'clock. And I can run as long as I want to because there's no show on. And he runs on the East Coast, so my show doesn't go off standardly till 1 a.m. on the East Coast. And there's no show scheduled. So he said, run as long as you want to. Okay. So I will. So here we sit.
Yeah,
but,
I can stay for about another,
anyway,
say 30 minutes.
To go back to, okay. To go on what you were talking about. I had a kind of an open case as a paranormal investigator in Chicago, to where a spirit, it took me a while to find out who it was. And his name is Bruno Rodi, a name that means absolutely nothing to nobody nowadays. But if you watch any of the 1920s based movies where Al Capone's in it, and Al Capone kind of hints that he wants a bomb to go off there. He had two people who set bombs. best one was Bruce.
Oh, wow.
He met Capone got in there through extortion. He would set a bomb in somebody's house, call them up on the phone, and said, if you don't give me so many thousands of dollars, I will blow up your house. So he said it at this rather prominent person's house in Chicago and said, $4,000, I will blow up your house. Or if you call the police, I will blow up your house. The man, of course, called the police, being an outstanding, well, I don't know how many citizens of Chicago are really upstanding. Very few, especially back then. They were invariably crooked. But anyway, he called the police, and his house exploded.
Oh, gosh.
This was Bruno Rodi. Bruno went to jail for a short time for extortion. He died a month before I was born.
Mm-hmm.
And I was investigating a bar, Ethel's Party. I don't even name the bar because it's closed now.
Mm-hmm.
In Chicago. It's 26th Street and Wentworth Avenue. And he was a member of the 26th Street gang, which was Al Capone's gang, the one that he took over, and one of the few still existing gangs in Chicago. And that's it. The reason this bar was haunted is because for 90 years before it was a bar, it was a funeral home.
Oh, wow.
Guess where Bruno Rodi's funeral was?
At that bar.
In the funeral home at this bar. They still had a raised area. It's where an occasional band would play in the bar. And that's where they displayed the bodies. If you go downstairs, they still had the thick walls around one room because back then there's no refrigeration. The bodies were literally on ice.
Mm-hmm.
You had the embalming room, of course, where they drained all the fluids out of the bodies. The pipeline where the bodies were drained into.
Mm-hmm.
And this, I don't know. They were redoing they did some work around the building, so I don't know if this pipe is still there. But the pipeline, when I was there a few years back, was still there where they drained the bodies into the sewer system in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
And you still could smell sewer because it was still about as big around, open directly to the Chicago sewer system.
Oh, geez.
Bruno was still there, especially in the cold room. Nobody would go in that cold room. They had all the power and all the little cakes for the Coca-Cola. I don't know if you know how a bar works or not. Where they got the CO2 where they push the Coke through the lines so they mix your drink.
Yes.
That was in the basement. The Coca-Cola man did not like going down there by himself.
No doubt.
He want one of the employees to go down in the basement with him. Even this girl that was the main bartender there, she was a tough look, about 5'8", maybe 135, 140 pounds, not a huge girl.
Mm-hmm.
But she said she never lost a fist fight against anybody. But she didn't like going in the basement. Almost refused to go in there by herself. Sometimes she had to when a keg ran out on the Coke, you just got to go the other bag into the machine. But she would not go into that heavily bricked up room that was the cold room. She would not go in there.
Wow.
Even with people. So I'm hard-headed. So guess where I investigated most of the time?
That's where you went.
I finally got some people to go in there with me. I couldn't get anybody to spend much time with me. Finally got a paranormal group to go in there. And I'm sitting there with a K2 meter right in front of me. And I feel something. And you've had this feeling yourself, I'm sure, when a spirit walks through you.
Oh, yes.
I could feel it. And I said, oh, okay. okay, he's walking through my back.
Mm-hmm.
I said, he's coming through. And of course, I didn't show any fear. So I let him just
Mm-hmm.
pass through me. And just as he's coming out the front side, the K2 meter goes off. I said, he's walking through the K2 meter.
Mm-hmm.
Then he got into I said, he's in the center of the circle. The K2 meter stopped going off.
Oh, wow.
And the guy was about 6'2" and around 210. In the camera view, you could see his feet about from the knees down. You could see him.
Mm-hmm.
All feet go backwards.
Wow.
Bruno, when he came through, instead of going through him like he did me, shoved him out of the way.
Oh, how?
And I got that on video. The feet going backwards.
I believe
The guy
that.
was extremely shocked. He didn't believe he fell. After the investigation was over, he admitted, I didn't fall, I was pushed.
Yes.
But I went in there
And he
with
was
psychic. I considered it kind of an open case. I went in there with a psychic.
And he probably was a little bit
Go ahead.
spooked too. So that I said he was probably a little bit in fear too. You know what I'm saying? Which is how come that act was able to be performed on him.
Yes, he was a little bit scared of him.
Mm-hmm.
We also had found, I've been to the place many times. We also found there were 20 to 23, 24 spirits in that building by Bruno.
Oh, wow.
You were saying that sometimes spirits are held in place by higher, stronger spirit.
Mm-hmm.
This is instance. The psychic and I went in there, and we had what we did. Most mobsters are practicing Catholics. They are Christian.
Yes.
So we approached it. We approached it from that point.
Mm-hmm.
We said, look, Jesus Christ forgives you for your sins. You have passed on. You've been stuck in this building since June 1956. I was born July 3rd, 1956, by the way. That's
Mm-hmm.
one reason he had kind of contacted me a little bit, because his death was about 2.5 weeks before my birth.
Oh, wow.
Which is kind of weird.
Yep.
But
A synchronicity.
The psychic said, Jesus Christ forgives you. I forgive you. I said, look, you attacked me. You have scratched me. You have knocked a hat slam off my head, which is all true. I said, you have walked through me. You have pushed me. You have hit me. I said, you are forgiven. Everything is forgiven. I said, Jesus Christ forgives you for all to get out of this building. This building, the bar is closing. Everybody either tearing it down or turning it into a bank. You do not want to be stuck down here when your room here is torn down to sitting here, or whatever they put at this location. I said, you do not want to be here for that.
Mm-hmm.
He still did not want to move the other side, because he knows where he's going, which is what I was going to add in addition to what you're saying. Sometimes they don't want to move, but because unfinished look, they want to watch somebody, watch their grandkids get through college or whatever. Just, how's the ancestors doing, and walk through their house. He was there out of sheer fear, but he knew he was going to hell. And he got caught there in limbo, and just said, well, I'm not going to move on. And he was refusing to move on, even though the two of us were trying to push him over. Said, look, if you got to leave here. You cannot be here. Go see the world. Go. There's a whole big world out there.
Mm-hmm.
And even today, he is walking around, seeing places other than Chicago. I said, there's other cities, there's other countries.
Mhm.
So he's basically touring the world. I did that with another kind of open case. Baxter's Grove had its white lady, and just a long story. Her firstborn child is still buried there.
Oh, wow.
It died in 1865 at 11 months and 4 days old. So she was coming from a cemetery about 3-4 mile crow flies every evening right at dusk to pick up her child so she wouldn't have to put up with the kind of more evil spirits there at night. And she'd been seen there sitting on, if you look up, go to Google, turn your Google meeting on, and look up a ghost photo. Lady,
Okay.
white lady, or especially if you're in a white lady at Baxter's Grove, you will see the most famous ghost picture ever taken by my friend and Greg's friend,
Mhm.
Dale Kazmarik's group, Ghost Research Society, taken by Judy Huff, also a friend of mine and Greg's.
Oh, wow. I will look it up.
And that
Absolutely.
picture was taken in 1992. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's a lady sitting on a square stone. It's obviously some kind of cut. It's got some lines cut in, little squares
Mhm.
cut in the stone, and you can see her sitting there. And you can see different colors on her dress. It's white, but it's got dark spots on it.
Mhm.
And what I did, I found a picture, a wedding picture, taken in 1863 with a lady whose wedding dress was you can't tell what color it is. That's yellow photography, really. Everything's a shade of yellow. It's not even a shade of gray. But it was a light colored dress with very large polka dots on it
Oh,
of a darker
wow.
color.
Mhm.
And that was her wedding dress, and that's what she appeared in Baxter's Grove wearing. I looked at the facial features, looked at the hairstyle, and the dress were all matches. And everybody I've shown the two pictures to side by side saying that is the worst person said is 90% match.
Yeah.
Everybody else said that's 95 to 98% sure that's a match.
Oh, wow.
So after 2.5 years it took me in research to find out who the white lady of Baxter's Grove is, it's Amelia Patrick Humphrey. Her child is born in the Patrick plot, which is the second largest plot in Baxter's Grove Cemetery. The child
Wow, that's
reached out to
amazing.
me, contacted me. I actually got the child talking. She actually learned how to talk. She picked up language skills. I actually started moving around a little bit around the cemetery a little bit, playing with some of her. She had 3 siblings who died young also. They would come by and play
Mhm.
with her, even though they're buried in the same cemetery the mother is.
Oh,
And
wow.
to show you though, you were talking about us and stuff earlier too.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is so similar to what I ran into. Her husband was a state senator in Illinois. He
Mhm.
was the most powerful man in the state in the latter part of the 1800s. He was the most powerful man in the state of Illinois outside of Chicago. If you ever had
Wow.
heard of the 1893 Columbian Fair, he tried to stop Chicago from hosting it
Mhm.
because Chicago was absorbing smaller towns around the city because they were told
Mhm.
by the World's Fair, you don't have a population big enough to host a World's Fair. So they went out and got several suburbs to agree to join the city so they had enough population to have the World's Fair. But he tried that because he was losing constituents. So because all of a sudden they were under another state senator's area, who, of course, was the city of Chicago.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
But she died. She died in 1881. 6 months after she died, he married his longtime secretary, who he'd been having an affair with since she started working for him.
Oh, jeez.
And what's worse, they're all buried in that cemetery together. John Humphrey is buried in the center. He's got one wife on his right, one wife on his left, and children that are buried in that cemetery with him are buried the other side of the wife's.
Oh,
The
wow.
ones that each wife bore.
There you go. Yeah, that's crazy. That is awesome.
This is a soap opera.
It sounds like it. It does. I am going to have to step away in about.
While
I'm sorry. I am going to have to step away in about 4 minutes. My dog's
Yes.
actually whining to go out. But this has been so interesting that I've really, really enthralled with your story.
I've been enthralled with yours.
Well, thank you.
We got it. We got to go when the dog's got a pee. That's important.
Yes, it is. And I'm going to go ahead and tuck him in and put some ice on my ankle. But I did want to thank you very, very much for having me. I would love to come back another time and talk some more with you for sure. And you had asked me to mention about the www.lynnmonet.com for my books. And this has been great. And we have a mutual admiration society, you and me. So that's great. There it is. At www.lynnmonet.com. I can get the book Omnipresent, What Happened Next, The Colors of Heaven, Beginnings Never End, which is not a scary story. It's a beautiful story about death, dying, and what happens afterwards. Also, The Gap, what your adolescent and teen needs to, what else they need to know. It'll be coming out in February. And October this year, the third book of the Omnipresent series, Omnipresent 111 Becky Don Drive, will also be out. So, yeah, and all sold on my site, www.lynnmonet.com.
Okay. Do me one favor.
Yes.
Do me one favor.
Yes.
Your new book?
Yes.
Send our common friend a copy. Not me. Send it.
Okay.
To
Dave?
Our buddy on
Dave,
Monday.
to Greg?
To Dave Scott.
Okay, to Dave. Yes.
Send it to Dave.
Mm-hmm.
I think he needs that book. Craig, I think he's okay. Okay.
Craig's okay. Yeah,
But,
I am going to send him a copy of the book.
Yes, Rick's fine. But Dave Scott, I think desperately needs your new book to kind of calm his fears, because fear can raise some bad sides and the bad side energy to attack you. And let's not have it.
Yeah, I think too, once he gets to the point of his life, people, even though they're afraid of it, once they finally come to terms with it, they become very peaceful. So hopefully that'll help happen too. But he's an empath. He's also very gifted. A lot of people, he talks, about other things, but yeah, he is an empath. That's for sure. So, and also, if I may mention, anybody that has any questions, I'm sorry, anybody that has any questions for me, I am, the last Sunday of every month, I am on Journey Through the Gate with Cisco. If ever you want to come on there and ask me some questions or anything, you can reach me there. And I'll be with Greg Koss tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. So.
Yeah, I'll probably be listening in tomorrow night. I fell asleep before Dave's show this past Monday night. Sorry I missed it. Next year we'll have you back. And
okay.
I believe you got another book coming out pretty soon.
I've got two more coming out. Yes, two more. Mm-hmm. Yeah, two more.
When will they be coming out? Sometime next year?
No, The Gap. The Gap will actually be out before Valentine's Day. So it will be out between Christmas and Valentine's Day. The third book, Omnipresent 111 Becky Dawn Drive, will be out closer to Halloween because it's another creepy thriller and all of these stories are true stories. So yeah, it'll come out more around then when people like the scary stuff. So I've got a group of people that like to read the scary stuff and a lot of people that don't. So, I kind of bring that one out around Halloween. But it's been a pleasure to be here, a pleasure to meet you.
What we can do,
Yes.
What we'll do is kind of plan to have you on twice right after each book's released. How's that?
I'll be in touch. That sounds good. So like around March or April, yeah, I'll reach out to you and definitely we'll talk some more. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And anybody listening,
we'll talk again in October.
And in October, yes. I have a book coming out, so around April, and then again in October, if you'd like me to be on your Halloween thriller. My other book should be out around that time.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So, because this past Halloween, I had another podcast.
You had a what?
So I'm sorry. I had an 11-hour podcast.
Oh, wow. That's great.
This past Halloween, 11 hours. By myself. Now, I was showing some videos. I was showing some investigation videos, specifically of me being in New Orleans. Yes, I do investigate quite a bit in New Orleans. That's why I'm going to Fear Fest. Phoenix and I, well, of course, like I said, she is a psychic, are planning on doing some investigations of a hotel in Hot Springs in April. We'll be hitting locations in New Orleans next October. So that being said, you said what you need to say. www.lynnmonet.com. Contact that website right there to get Lynn's books. She's got more coming out. She will be back on this show. She will probably be back on the day He Loves You. I think she loves you.
Yes, I do. I send love and light to everybody.
It has been a real honor.
Oh, thank you. It's been an honor for me.
And love and light back to you.
Love and light to you. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening. And it's been my pleasure and an honor for me as well. Thank you so much. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
You too. Care of the Lord. All right. That's it for everybody. Hope you enjoyed the show tonight. Lynn Monet will return for a sequel. Probably maybe a couple of times next year when she gets her other books out. We've had a great time. We've had some great conversations back and forth. We left some things unanswered because she had to go, and we don't want to run the show too unreasonable. But anyway, next week, Greg Haas will be here again. He was here last week. He's been doing so much stuff. We are going to have him back next week and talk about some more things he has been doing. And then the next week, which will be after Christmas, the show between Christmas and New Year's, I will be having a 1-year wrap up, just me, of some of the shows. I'll be showing some of the investigations. I may even post a little bit of another show that I've got several 1 hour or less shows that were shown, and maybe rerun one of those shows and then come on with a live show just the entire year. And then we'll start with a whole new bunch of guests starting in January on Thursday at 11 p.m. Eastern time. Of course, that's 10 o'clock my time, which is Central. Greg, he's also on Eastern time. Now, Lynn, she's on the East Coast. So that's 11 o'clock her time. So that's why she's having to go, because it's 12:42 here. It is 1:42 a.m. where she was at. So she's got to go. I didn't say earlier when I've run the really long shows, I was usually talking to people, at least in Central And I think the longest shows I run was somebody in the mountain, and the other one was on Pacific. So it was, even at the end of the 4-hour show, it was just then starting to get a little bit late. Just after 12, after a 4-hour show on the West Coast. That's what the intro says, 8 p.m. at starting time. That's when it used to start, but now that's true for the West Coast only. Just when that's good for. It's 10 p.m. Central, 11 p.m. Eastern. All right, next week, Greg Koss. Again, good buddy with him. And we shall be back in 1 week. Because Bones, get us out of here. Play this outro. And so I can get some drops of eyes from all this UV light. And maybe go to bed sometime tonight. All right. Appreciate y'all watching. Be back next week. With Rick Oss. Join in the chat room on either Facebook, on the Lynn Dorman profile. Look for Southern Fried Paranormal Podcast as a page that's connected to my profile. Or SEARK, SEARK, PS, open space, Lynn Dorman. That's the name of my channel. I do have that down as the main contact for YouTube. So if you put SEARK, PS, space Lynn Dorman, you will be taken to that channel. And then you click on live and you will see the live shows put there. And you can, when the show pops on, bang, you're there. Now, if you like, share, and subscribe, please give me a thumbs up to start with. But you can like, share, and subscribe me on YouTube, and you will not miss a show. You will get a notice. Put the notification, ring the bell, and you'll get a notification whenever I do come on with a live show. That is the best way to watch this. StreamYard and YouTube seem to work very well together, and I've had no problems with. Thank you. Led to the Light Productions, original. It's a great show. Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate the kind words. And like I said, Bones, get us out of here. Good night, everybody. See you next week. Rick Koss will be here. Good night. Have a great weekend.
Thanks for watching our show. Be sure to tune in to next week as once again we journey way down south into Bayou Country for another heaping portion of Southern Fried Paranormal with Lynn Dorman and Bones. Make sure to like, share, and follow. Y'all come back now. You hear?